Hi there. I'd like to thank Kip Knudsen, Rachel Petro, and of course everyone that is involved in organizing this year's Chamber of Commerce Conference. I wish that we could all be there with you to do our usual delegation dog and pony show, but the congressional schedule is just not going to allow that this week. It's appropriations markup time around here and we are busy, so I apologize for that, but I appreciate being able to send you this video. I understand this year's conference is focused on championing Alaska, identifying ways that you can all work together to solidify priorities, drive our economy forward. Know that I'm working with you on that here in Washington, looking for ways to improve the economy and to reduce unemployment. To do that, America needs more than a short-term stimulus sugar high that just gets us through the next election. We need pro-growth tax reform. We haven't looked at the tax code as a whole in 25 years. It's long past time. And I don't think that extending one tax provision at a time for 1 year at a time gives any of you the kind of certainty that you need. But that piecemeal approach on everything from the research and development tax credit to the alternative minimum tax, this is the status quo in Washington right now. We need to change that, and we need to overhaul the entire tax code, reducing tax rates for individuals and corporations in exchange for eliminating the number of credits and the deductions that are available. The tax code needs to be simpler and more fair. It's as simple as that. We also need the federal government to get out of the way of the private sector. According to the NFIB, there are more than 4,000 environmental, financial, labor, and other new federal regulations pending today. Businesses aren't being judged by their safety record, but by their safety records. Now, I imagine that some of you are waiting to see if you can do what the federal agencies require of you before you decide to grow your businesses and create new jobs. Additionally, I'm told the average business pays more than $10,000 per employee to comply with government rules. Just last week, a witness on Capitol Hill told us that there are $1 trillion worth of excessive regulations handicapping our economy. We need to examine existing regulations and carefully weigh the cost and the benefit of proposed new regulations before we burden our small businesses with additional regulations. Most folks think of Congress primarily in terms of legislation, but I'll tell you, I spend a huge amount of time fighting federal overreach or prodding agencies to do the right thing to protect Alaska's interest. Now, one area on this front that I know that you're interested in is the EPA's new regulations on marine vessels, including cruise ships, operating in waters within 200 miles of North American coasts. 2 years ago, the EPA proposed new air emission standards that, beginning next summer, will require all bigger vessels in southeast and south central waters to start burning low sulfur diesel fuel to meet air standards in newly created emission control areas. These areas cover half of Alaska and all of the West Coast. By the year 2016, the standards could require ships to have new engines to further cut emissions. Our immediate problem is that the standards will raise freight costs by perhaps as much as 20% and raise the cost of cruises as we face the likely scarcity and the cost of low sulfur diesel on the West Coast next year. That could be a second hit to our tourism industry at a time when travelers are limiting their vacations due to the impact on the economy. I find this rule particularly concerning for our state since the EPA has never performed an Alaska-specific air study that shows cruise ships or freight carriers to be causing significant air problems in our coastal areas. I'd like to see an Alaska exemption from the proposed emission air limits. So far, the EPA is flatly rejecting an Alaska exemption, even though the Great Lakes won such a waiver 2 years ago. If the EPA continues to refuse that approach, it needs to set up a workable process to enforce its new proposed emission air limits. The shipping and the cruise industry has been working with the EPA to carve out a more affordable way to meet the requirements under the international agreement, which in part requires the emission reductions. Now, another issue that I know you're following is the Federal Communication Commission, the FCC's National Broadband Plan. The goal of providing every American access to broadband capability is a noble one. Broadband capability across Alaska would clearly benefit our state, particularly in the rural areas. But the FCC wants to shift up to $15.5 billion over the next decade from the Universal Service Fund to support broadband expansion. This would shift large amounts of telecommunication dollars from our rural areas and local operators because the FCC is focused on connecting the most people for the lowest cost. Under the FCC proposal to shift funding, Alaska could lose $100 million, and with that, access to telecommunications services. Alaska is different than the lower 48, and while we want to increase our broadband capability, we have to find the right formula mix to ensure that our state is not harmed by the FCC plan. Now, from a broader perspective in terms of what we're doing, we all need to help the private sector create jobs. Alaska is perhaps better off than the nation as a whole, but our unemployment rate has been stuck at 7.7% for 2 months running, and that's way too high. One area where we know we can create jobs is with resource development. But it feels like we're being fought every step of the way as the executive branch proposes new wilderness areas in ANWR. They make it difficult to build the infrastructure necessary to access the NPRA, or they won't give an answer on OCS permits. The federal government should instead be embracing efforts to create new jobs and develop new resources for our country. If the White House seriously wants to raise revenues, well, we've got ANWR, we've got the Beaufort and the Chukchi sitting dormant instead of contributing to the economy. Now, I'm told that Shell expects to receive its permits to proceed next summer in both the Beaufort and the Chukchi. This has required a great deal of work by Shell and certainly my staff. We've taken this case all the way to the president, and so has the opposition. If we do see drill ships sail into the Arctic next summer, as I hope we will, it will be over the objections of a very loud and dedicated opposition movement. They will litigate at every turn, cash in all of their political chips, and some will even do what they did in Greenland and chain themselves to the drilling equipment in protest. Our job is to keep the pressure up in the other direction: jobs, revenue, and energy security. Now, another reason that I favor offshore energy exploration is for the research that it would involve. Fact of the matter is we know more about the other side of the moon than we do about our ocean floor. Only a concurrent build-out of our exploration programs can monitor our oceans at a level that will support good science. I'm co-chairing the Senate Oceans Caucus to educate my colleagues and build a smart path forward on our ocean policy, a policy that will hopefully include exploration and research and better infrastructure in the Arctic. But it's important to do the right research. I've led the effort to oppose the administration's plans for coastal and marine spatial planning, a new program that would be quite expensive and could take federal funding away from the crucial fisheries research that creates jobs and economic activity. The state of Alaska is concerned that this program will have adverse impacts on commercial use and development in the oceans and the coastal zone, create delays, and present an obstacle to job creation. There are also jurisdictional issues, as federal marine spatial plans would include state waters and potentially even upland areas. I asked the Commerce, Justice, and Science Appropriations Subcommittee to withhold funding for these activities within marine spatial planning, and I'm pleased that they have done so. In another area relating to resource development, Alaska is blessed with an abundant supply of great minerals. We've got gold, silver, zinc, other rare earth elements. We've got some incredible opportunities to expand production of the minerals needed for modern defense, computing, energy, and medical technologies. Responsible mineral production is not only strengthens the nation's security, economy, and competitive stature, but it's accompanied by local infrastructure improvements and job creation that remain vital to the future of our state. I've introduced legislation, it's Senate Bill 1113, that establishes a critical minerals policy for our nation. I'm hopeful that we can advance it quickly because we can't wait to develop a coherent strategy on this issue. One last issue to bring up, and that's the issue of 8A. The 8A program helps tribes and ANCs deliver important benefits to tribal members and ANC shareholders. Many here in Washington don't understand the importance of this program, and it remains under constant attack, singled out by a vocal few. However, The SBA, the Small Business Administration, has issued new regulations governing the Section 8A Business Development Program, the size and other features. This is the first comprehensive revision to the 8A Business Development Program in more than 10 years. And I've heard many positive things from tribes regarding the rules. Many of the substantive changes are intended to ensure that 8A program benefits flow to beneficiaries in order to help reduce potential waste, fraud, and abuse. And I'm hopeful that these regulations will help people here in DC better understand the importance of the 8A program. I want to close by thanking you for your interest in these and other issues. I know that this has been a long video for you to sit through, and I appreciate your indulgence. I've tried to anticipate some of the questions that you would have asked were I able to be with you, again, with the Congressman and with Senator Begich. But I thank you for all the good work that you do. I look forward to continuing to work with all of you on the issues that are so important to our state. Thank you so very much.